Hello, my name is Wendy Stevens and welcome back to my YouTube channel, Wellness with Wendy, RD. Now, in today's video, we will be discussing carbohydrates and its benefit, but we're going to be discussing something a little bit different, right? I know we've been talking about carbohydrates for the past 2-3 weeks. Today, it's all about resistant starch. Yes, what it can do for us, why it matters, and the food sources that we can get it from. That is what we're going to be pretty much divulging in this video. Now, we've known, or hopefully by now, you know that sugar are carbohydrates that our body uses for energy. So yes, we do need carbohydrate food sources. And resistant starch is a kind of carbohydrate, but it acts a little bit differently than the other forms of carbohydrate that we had discussed. Resistant starch is a type of fiber, and there are other two forms of fiber that I have discussed in previous videos, soluble and insoluble. And they're a little bit more different than the resistant starch. You see, resistant starch tends to resist being digested in our small intestines, which is where most of the food is broken down, right? Instead, resistant starch travels to our large intestines and feeds the good bacteria that is in our tummy. Yes, we do have good bacteria in our stomach, and resistant starch is the food that they need in order to work properly. Now, there are different types of resistant starch. Some comes from food that are raw or less ripe, like green bananas. Others come from food that after you cook them and cool them, such as, rice or pasta. And you can find resistant starch in foods such as beans and whole grains. Even though, there are different kinds of foods that contains resistant starch in different forms, we have to make sure that the most important message that we're getting from this is that it helps our overall health and our gut, right? Now, let's talk about what resistant starch can do for our body if we consume it on a daily basis. First and foremost, resistant starch is a type of fiber. And what do fiber does? Fiber helps to lower our blood sugar levels. So if we're consuming foods that are high in resistant starch, it helps those patients or clients that do suffer from high blood sugar levels, right? We've already identified that it is food for the good bacteria in our stomach. So yes, it's going to help our GI system if we're consuming foods that are high in resistant starch. Also, it helps to pretty much reduce any kind of GI issues such as constipation or diarrhea. So if we're consuming foods that are high in resistant starch fiber, it helps with that as well. Another thing that it can do is that because resistant starch comes from or grains or starchy vegetables, it will help to lower our cholesterol level, unless we're adding foods to it that can affect our cholesterol level, such as if we're adding certain types of butter or margarine or certain types of meats. Then yes, if those types of food contains bad cholesterol and we're adding it to our, resistant starch food, then yes, it can affect our cholesterol level. But in and of itself, no, it will actually help our heart if we're consuming those types of food. And last but not least, it can help to lower the risk of developing colon cancer. We have to remember that when we're eating foods that are high in fiber, such as resistant starch, it is a type of fiber. If we're eating those types of food, then yes, it can help our GI system and also reduces that risk of developing colon cancer. So let's go over some food sources that you can find resistant starch in. And you might have been eating most of these foods already, right? Such as your green bananas or your green plantains. And these do have a lot of resistant starch, when they're not ripe as yet. But once they turn yellow, then most of the resistant starch is gone, right? Peas, beans, and lentils, these are also really good sources of resistant starch. And we can add, these, especially the white beans, to our soups or salads or tacos to increase that fiber in our diet. How about oats and barley? And these are also good for breakfast, right? Even to make homemade granola. These are also good source of resistant starch. We've already talked about, cooked and cooled rice, potatoes, or even pasta. Yes, these types of foods, once they're cool after cooking, they do contain the resistant starch. So these are foods that you pretty much want to use when you're meal prepping, right, for the whole week. So if we cook them in large batch, put them in small containers to, manage our portions and then reheat them, then yes, we are adding resistant starch to our diet. Now, other foods that do have resistant starch that we've discussed is, your overnight oatmeal, right? Now, we can do quick, simple things with this, such as do your oat, add milk or yogurt, some frozen fruits, some chia seeds on top, or flax meal, and we have them for breakfast the next morning. That is high in resistant starch. How about if we add such things as the green banana flour or potato starch in our smoothies, or sprinkle, 1 or 2 teaspoons on our food? We just don't want to cook it because then it removes the resistant starch. So that's ways to increase and add resistant starch in our diet as well. We just have to remember, when we're adding any type of fiber into our diet, we need to increase our water intake. Yes, because if we're not increasing that water, if we're doing too much fiber all at once, it can cause, issues with our GI system, such as gasiness or bloating, right? Now, to wrap this up, we have to remember that resistant starch is a super helpful part of the foods that we can feed the good bacteria into our gut, right? It keeps that belly happy. It also helps with lowering our blood sugar levels as well, right? As long as we're not adding anything else to the resistant starch foods, such as if we're not adding any kind of sugar, condensed milk, evaporated milk, then yes. And I'm talking about like when we're doing those overnight oats to make it a little bit sweet, we can do like monk fruit or stevia instead of those types of foods, or sweeteners, right? Also, we've talked about cooked and cooled rice, potatoes, pastas. So we have to make sure that we're still portioning them properly and pairing them with our good fats and lean protein as well. We want to do a complete meal. We want to do a whole balanced type of diet or lifestyle. So we don't just want to have all starch on our plate. We want to make sure that we're adding those lean protein and that good fat as well, right? It's going to keep us satisfied and full. Now, if you love this video, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and go ahead and watch another one of my video, whether it be on, high protein diet that helps with weight management, or the one that helps with your gut, like high fibers food that can help with your gut, or sugar feeds cancer, which is a myth, right? Now, if you have any questions or concerns, please put them down in the comment section and I will get those answered for you. Have a good day. Bye.